We are God's creation, each of us crafted for a purpose. We begin our journey as dreamers in a world filled with possibilities. Nothing seems impossible. Along the way, we begin to settle and dreams are replaced with details. Routine takes over. We find ourselves listening to the thoughts of limitations, and our purpose and desires are lost into the static of our lives. And still, in our deepest places, we feel a push towards something more, a sense that we were made for something greater. It's time to co-author your life with God. Let's discover what was lost, restore what was diminished, and live out our purpose. This is our dream year.
And good morning, everybody. Welcome to Access this morning. We are honored you're here this morning. And you're not here alone, because today we're joined by our Brandon campus. They're joining us by video. Will you say hello to your church family, everybody? Yeah. Love you guys. We do. We love you so much. Today's going to be an awesome, exciting day. But before we jump in to conclude our series called Dream Year, I need your help. Today, I want to announce a couple things that are really important. And the first thing I'm going to announce in a moment is 3 simple words. And when I say them, and when you hear these for the next several weeks, I need you to lose your mind, because it's really the biggest deal ever. It's the biggest day in the course of human history. In fact, I'm going to say these 3 words, and then you're going to cheer because it really matters. Here's the words. Easter is coming. Come on, everybody. Yeah. Easter's coming. It's coming. It's coming on Sunday, March 27th this year, and we're pumped about it. It's just a few weeks away. So I want to ask you to start praying about who you're going to invite, because it's going to be an amazing opportunity to see people come into relationship with Jesus, and we're excited about that Sunday, March 27th. So start planning on who you're going to invite now. Now, beyond all of that, as we lead up to Easter, there's some amazing things happening that you need to know about. Now, the last couple of weeks we've been talking about something, but today's an important day, because today's a day you can register for something that we're calling Serve Day. Now, if you have a phone, you can do this now. If you can remember this, you can do it later at home. We'll tweet about it all week. But www.access.tv/Serve Day. And there, you're going to find all the information you need to register. Here's what the site will look like when you go there. When you get to access.tv/Serve Day, there's a button at the bottom that says Register for Serve Day. We kind of make it very simple for you. When you click that, what you'll see is a list of all the different opportunities that we have for you to serve. And we're anticipating hundreds of people serving on that day. And what's going to happen is you'll go here and you'll click the blue button for the one you're interested in that says More Info. And there you can register yourself. You can register your family. Just register your neighbors. Bring them along. It's going to be fun. And when you register, we need you to tell us what shirt size you wear, because we're going to give you a special t-shirt, a Serve Day t-shirt for serving with us that day. And so we want you to register, get yourself a place to serve. Here's the reason. Those places are going to fill up. We're hoping and expecting that over 500 people on that day will serve together. It's going to be a really big day. We want you to come. You're like, well, I've got kids. Bring your kids. There's no better way for them to see you showing God's love in a tangible way than for them to serve alongside you. So we've got a lot of different project options. It's going to be great. The t-shirts are going to be blue, and here's my hope. My hope is that we unleash this wave of blue t-shirts all across our cities in Lakeland and in Brandon that will literally in one day make an indelible difference. In one day, if hundreds of us will come together, we can literally make a difference in our cities. And so would you join me on this? I'm asking you to register for it. We could have spent money throwing a big fun event for the city. We could have spent money doing a big egg hunt, and we've done those things and there's nothing wrong with them. But this year we decided to roll up our sleeves and serve. Here's the website one more time, access.tv/Serve Day. It's going to be great, okay? Now, we are in the series, and today we're concluding the series called Dream Year, and I'm really excited that I get to wrap it up. I get to back clean up for us and wrap the series up. If you've missed any of it, it's been an amazing series, and you can see all of it online at access.tv. They're all there for you. The last few weeks have been fun. We talked about our dreams and how God gives us dreams for a certain reason. It's to propel us or to allure us into the future. And then we said this on week 2, that it is entirely possible that sometimes the promise that you've been given from God, the dream that you have in your heart, looks nothing like the process process. And then if you were here last week, my friend John Eric Mosler spoke, and he did an absolutely amazing job talking about what happens when we feel like our dream has died. And today, I want to talk to you about what's on the other side of our dreams. Now, right before service, my wife came up to me, and my wife must have had a lot of coffee this morning, because she came up to me this morning, she goes, I got this great idea, just say yes before I tell you. And that's always a dangerous idea. And she goes, okay, there's a lot of single people that come to Access, right? And I'm like, yeah, hey, check this out, this is cool. Last Sunday was the largest Sunday in Access attendance history ever. We had 755 people between both campuses. Isn't that awesome? It's awesome. And with that, you get a lot of married people, but you also get a lot of single people. And so my wife said, there's some amazing single people here. And she goes, what? I had this idea, okay? You ever seen The Bachelor? Anyone seen The Bachelor? Anyone look around? Confession time? My hand is down. I've never watched it. I am a Christian. And anyways, passive-aggressive judgment. And anyway, so my wife said, okay, like what if we interviewed all the single people? We brought them in. You've got years of premarital counseling experience. We'll take them and we'll just assess them. And then what we'll do is we'll match them up. And if you sign up for this, we're going to pair you up, and you have to go with it. You have to do it. You have to go on a date. And she said this to me, and I was like, that's the best idea ever. We should try it. And we never know what would happen if we did that. We could try to hook you up with someone, and it might work, it might not work, but you never know. Now, my wife and I are in a really interesting new phase of our life. Now, we have 2 boys, Joey and Gavin, and I know what it's like to be a boy. I know what it's like to raise boys. I know what it's like to have brothers. In my family growing up, there was just brothers. There were no sisters. And then my wife and I, we had babies. We had 2 boys, and they're boys. I understand what to do with those boys. But when we were pregnant with Ella, and we found out we were going to have a little girl, there was something in my heart that was terrified. That there was this part of my soul that was like, I don't know how to father a little girl. I don't know what it's like to have a sister. All of this stuff is new to me, and I wondered things about having a girl. Like I wondered, for example, about having a girl. Are there things that we have to nurture in her, or are there things that'll just be natural to her? And here's an example. We'll go to places like Target or Walmart, and my boys love to go to the Lego section. My boys love Legos. I hate Legos. They cost a lot of money, and you have to assemble it yourself. Have you ever stepped on a Lego in the middle of the night? You know, it's like the teeth of Satan himself have gripped your foot. Anyway, so my boys love these things, and we'll go down the Lego aisle, and we'll look at their toys. And then we'll turn the corner and we'll go down a princess aisle. We'll go down a Barbie aisle or Minnie Mouse or little girl toys. And Ella, who when we were walking down the Lego aisle is completely unaware of what's happening. She could care less about it. The moment we turn down the Minnie Mouse aisle, she goes, ooh. And there's this part of my heart that just melts, and there's this part of my credit card that also melts, and I melt for her. I buy her these things because I love her. It's like she loves these things. Another new introduction into my family life of late is princess movies. Growing up as a boy, we didn't watch princess movies. When I had boys, we didn't watch princess movies. But let me tell you something. I can quote every word now to the movie Frozen. I can quote every word to the movie Tangled because we've watched it so many times. Now, what's interesting to me about girl movies, about princessy type movies, is usually at the end there's this scene, there's this big climatic moment at the end of the story where the people, the man and the woman, they get together, they fall in love, and it says about them at the end that they lived happily ever after. Happily ever after. And then the credits roll, and we're left to imagine what the future looks like. Then the credits roll, and we are left to interpret what the rest of their story is going to look like. The story leaves us at happily ever after, but what's on the other side of that? Today, I want to ask a question for you about what's on the other side of your happily ever after. And really, maybe the question for you is maybe what is on the other side of your I wish it could have been? What's on the other side of your dream? Maybe for you today, the question we're asking is what's on the other side of your dream that's been fulfilled? And maybe for you, we're asking what's on the other side of your dream that is still in your heart that you haven't yet quite seen? Or maybe what's on the other side of your dream that feels like it's dissolved and crumbled beneath you? What is on the other side of that dream? Now, to do this, we're going to do what we've done throughout this whole series, and we're going to look at the life of Joseph. Now, Joseph is one of my favorite people in all of Scripture because he lives this extraordinary life. And if you've missed the series, we've talked about the different stages of his life. But before we jump in at the end of his life today, I want to talk about where he's been so that if you're new to this or you don't know what it is, we'll catch you up. Here's what Joseph's life looked like. Joseph is born into his father's house. Joseph is born as one of 12 brothers, and he is the favored child. And a lot of parents, they'll say things like, man, I don't have a favorite, and they really don't. Joseph's father did, and it was him. Joseph's father loved him, and he made no bones about the fact that Joseph was his favorite. In fact, to show his brothers who the favorite was, Joseph's father gave Joseph an ornate coat. Some translations of the Bible call it a coat of many colors, and it symbolized how favored Joseph actually was. So he starts in his father's house, and there at his father's house, he has this dream. Actually, he has two dreams at the age of 17. His first dream is that at some point in his life, his brothers would bow before him. And then later, he had another dream that his brothers and his mother and father would one day bow before him. And he tells this to his brothers, and when he tells it to his brothers, they hate him for it. In fact, the verses say 3 or 4 different times that his brothers hated him. And they hated him so much that at one point they schemed to kill him. And luckily for Joseph, one of the brothers spoke up and said, let's not kill him. Let's just take him and let's throw him into this pit. They were out in the middle of nowhere, and there was this old cistern that was dried up. And they said, let's just throw him in here. So they threw him in there. And as they were pondering what to do, a band of gypsies went walking by, and they saw them. And they said, we can just sell Joseph. We'll sell him into slavery. Then he'll be out of our hands, but we won't have killed him, so his blood won't be on our hands. So they sell Joseph into slavery, and they go back to Joseph's father, and they say, Joseph, we found his coat, and there's blood on it. Something must have happened to him. So Joseph goes from the prestige and the honor of his father's house. He goes from the safety and security of his father's house to the fear of the pit. And then later he's sold into slavery, and he's exchanged multiple times, but he lands in the house of a man named Potiphar. Potiphar was probably one of the most powerful men in all of Egypt, probably only second in power to Pharaoh himself. And he's there, and as he's there, it's like his life took a deep dip. It went from his father's house, it took a deep dip, but it's getting a little bit better. He's a slave, but at least he's a slave in a house that has power and prestige and money. At least he's probably taken care of for his service. And it says that he finds favor in Potiphar's house. Potiphar loves him and he trusts him. And because he trusts him, at one point it says about Potiphar that the only thing Potiphar knew that he actually had was that which was served to him in food. Like Joseph took care of all of Potiphar's details of his life. And so Potiphar he's in Potiphar's house, and at one point, as Potiphar's noticing him, so does Potiphar's wife. And it's interesting to me, Potiphar's wife notices him, and it says about Joseph that he was good looking. It doesn't say anything about Potiphar's wife, but it says Joseph was good looking. And at one point, she tries to seduce him. She tries to seduce him, and he resists, and she tries again and again and again. And at one point, he keeps resisting her. A little funny side note. Often when we think of this story, I think sometimes we think that Potiphar's wife must have been smoking hot, and Joseph was like a complete hero, a champ for avoiding her. Maybe that's not the case. We don't know. Maybe it was easier for Joseph than we thought. I have no idea. That's just me reading between the lines. But at one point, she throws himself. She tries to seduce him, and Joseph doesn't go for it again. And Joseph has this moment where he realizes if he gives in and sleeps with Potiphar's wife, it could cost him everything. Check this out. And if he doesn't give in, and if he holds his integrity, it can also cost him everything. And he says, I'm not going to do this. Why would I do this? My Lord, the one that I serve, my boss, Potiphar, and my God, he would not have anything to do with this. And so he rejects her. And when he rejects her, she lunges towards him. And as he's fleeing the house, she grabs a hold of something that he's wearing, and he takes off and loses his coat or his vest. And she starts screaming sexual assault. She screams rape. And in that culture, rape was punishable by death. What's interesting is Potiphar doesn't have Joseph put to death, which probably assumes that he thinks about Joseph that he's probably telling the truth and that his wife might be a liar. So they've obviously got some marital issues to work through with a counselor or Dr. Phil or someone, but they don't. And so Potiphar takes Joseph, and instead of killing him, he throws him into prison. Now try to connect the dots for a moment. If you're Joseph, who was born into a father's house of prominence, and you find yourself in a pit, in slavery, and then in prison, what are you thinking about when you're thinking about your dream? Joseph, who had the dream at 17 years old, is now in prison, and through a whole nother series of stories and a whole nother series of miracles, at one point, Joseph in prison interprets the dream of two men. And one of the men eventually finds himself seated at the right hand of Pharaoh, and Pharaoh is having this problem. He has these dreams, but he doesn't know what they mean. He has these dreams, but he doesn't know how to interpret them. And the man who was the friend said, hey, there was this guy when I was in prison named Joseph. And that guy, Joe, I don't know what it was about him, but he could interpret dreams. And Pharaoh said, bring him to me. And Joseph interprets the dream. And the way he interprets the dream is that there's going to be a massive drought that sweeps throughout the whole nation. And if you're careful now, if you'll plan for it now, you can reap a massive harvest and you can be wise and you can store it. And then when the drought hits, you'll be prepared to outlast the drought. There's going to be a season of plenty and then there's going to be a season of drought. Use your season of plenty to stockpile as much as you can, and then you'll have the power, because when there's no food and you have food, you have all the power. So Joseph is in prison, but then he's elevated now to to Pharaoh's house. At one point, Pharaoh says that there's going to be no one else in command above you except for me. You're seated at my right hand. You're the number 2 in command in all the country. Now, the gap between his father's house and being seated at the right hand of Pharaoh was 13 years. 13 years. Now, I don't know if you're here and you've got a dream that you've held on to for a while, but think about how long 13 years is. Where were you 13 years ago? Think about how long 13 years is. Think about all the stuff that Joseph walked through in 13 years. Now, here's the deal. Joseph was 17 in his father's house. He's around 30 years old when he's seated at the right hand of Pharaoh. And then 9 more years go by. 22 years from the time that Joseph's brothers threw him in the pit. And Joseph has this amazing moment happen. Genesis chapter 42, if you have your message notes here, is what's happening. Genesis 42. Says this: Now Joseph was the governor of all the land, the person who sold grain to its people. So when Joseph's brothers arrived, Joseph's brothers show up because they don't have food. They bowed down to him with their faces to the ground. Now remember Joseph's dream? That his brothers would one day bow to him? As soon as Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them, but he pretended to be a stranger and spoke harshly to them. He's just going to mess with them a little bit. Where do you come from, he asked. From the land of Canaan, they replied, to buy food. They're here because they are in need. Next verse. Although Joseph recognized his brothers, they didn't recognize him. 13 years changes a person. You probably look a lot different at 30 than you did at 17. Then he remembered his dreams about them, and he said to them, you are spies. He's just going to mess with them. He's going to toy with them. It's like, you are spies. You have come to see where our land is unprotected. There's something about you. You're here for a different reason. What are you doing? No, my Lord. They answered, your servants have come to buy food. That's why we're here. We're not here to spy. We are all the sons of one man. Your servant are honest men and not spies. Verse 12. No, he said to them, you have come to see where our land is unprotected. Joseph keeps prodding at them and poking at them. But they replied, your servants, we were 12 brothers. Now think about how awkward this is. They're telling Joseph the story of himself. Your servants were 12 brothers, the sons of one man who lives in the land of Canaan. The youngest, now that was Joseph's only true full-blooded brother. Joseph had 10 brothers that were half-brothers and one other brother named Benjamin who was his half-brother. He says the youngest, that's Benjamin, is with our father, and the other one is no more. That's talking about Joseph. They're talking to the one that they think is dead. And then Joseph said to them, it is just as I told you, you are spies, verse 15. And this is how you will be tested. This is how you can prove that you're not spies. As surely as Pharaoh lives, you will not leave this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Now this is a very interesting moment. If you were thinking about this cinematically, this is this massive plot twist. All the brothers now find themselves bowing down to Joseph. This is the first realization of one of Joseph's dreams. They find themselves bowing down to Joseph, not realizing it's Joseph. All 10 of them are there. The 11th brother wasn't there because the father thought to himself, I've already lost Joseph, my son of the wife whom I love. I can't even risk Benjamin. It would put me in the grave. In fact, Joseph's father Jacob says, if Benjamin were to die, I would die of great sorrow. He says, you would bury my gray-headed hair in the ground, a face and a heart full of sorrow. And then this time goes by. And Joseph eventually sends almost all the brothers back, all but one. He keeps one and keeps him in prison, hoping the other brothers will eventually come back. And the brothers go back home and they try to convince their father to send Benjamin and the rest of them to Joseph so that they can buy food. And so they go, and finally 2 years pass, and all this time passes, and eventually they run out of food. And finally the father relents and he allows Benjamin to come back to Egypt with the brothers. And they get there and there's this interesting moment. Joseph sees his brother Benjamin. And when he sees Benjamin, it says that he weeps. He had to leave because he was weeping so uncontrollably. And Benjamin walks into the room with the other brothers, and Joseph began asking questions like things like, where's your father? And is he still alive? Well, what is the latest on the family? Tell me about them. He's asking weird questions about the family. And then we get to this interesting set of scripture in chapter 45 where Joseph's going to reveal himself. It says, then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. Now to this point, they have no idea that they're in the presence of Joseph, the brother that they sold into slavery. They think they're at the hands of someone who is accusing them of espionage, of being a spy. He says, come close to me. And when they had done so, this is what he said. Now try to imagine this moment. I'm your brother. I'm your brother, Joseph. It's me, guys. Look, it's me. It's the brother you sold into slavery. Remember that? Remember that? 22 years ago? Do you remember that? You sold me, you threw me into a pit, the gypsies came by, you sold me. Do you remember that? Anybody remember? It's me. Imagine the panic that would be on set on their faces. The next verse is this, and this is really one of the most powerful verses in the Bible. And Joseph keeps going. He says, and now, do not be distressed and do not be angry with yourselves for selling me here. If you've had someone that's hurt you, if you've had someone that's abused you, if you've had someone that's abandoned you in your life, listen to Joseph's perspective on it. Don't be distressed and don't be angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that who sent me? That God sent me ahead of you. So don't be distressed. Don't be worried. Like, I know you did something tragic and I know you did something wrong, but it wasn't you doing this alone. Like, you may or may not realize, but there is someone else who is co-authoring the story with you. God sent me ahead of you. God sent me here. You may have thought you were selling me into slavery, but it was God himself that was at work in what's happening. Verse 6. For 2 years now, there's been famine in the land, and for the next 5 years, there will be no plowing and reaping. This is the part of the prophecy that Joseph had, the dream interpretation that Joseph had for Pharaoh. But God sent me ahead of you. You didn't send me here. You were just doing what God was in charge of the whole time. You didn't send me here. God did. God sent me ahead of you to preserve for you a remnant on earth and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Look at this last verse. So then, it was not you who sent me here, but God. He made me father to Pharaoh, meaning second in command only to Pharaoh, Lord of his entire household, and ruler of all of Egypt. So Joseph now has this perspective. He had this dream when he was 17 years old in his father's house. And I can't imagine the tenacity he would have had to hold on to the dream for all of those years. Through all the trials, through all the tribulations, I would have been coerced. I would have felt this pressure to throw in the towel. And Joseph, in the midst of these moments, in the midst of his dream, in the midst of this season where it felt like, man, I'm in a pit. This is the worst. I'm in prison. What am I supposed to do from prison? How can I dream when I'm literally in chains? And yet he has this moment where he begins to realize that God's been in control the whole time. So I want to talk to you for a moment about, why do your dreams matter? Like, why does it matter that you have a dream for your life? Why does it matter that you are co-authoring your life with God? The first thing is this, if you have your message notes, our dreams awaken us to God's creative purpose for our lives. Dreams awaken us to the purpose that God has for us. For Joseph, he began to realize at 17 years old that there was going to be a moment when something happened. There was going to be a moment for him when his brothers would come and literally bow themselves, and there must have been a reason for it. It began to awaken him to the reality that there was something more in his life that was going to happen. He was created on purpose and for a purpose. The second thing it does for us is this. Dreams align us to the people of the same dreams. Now, this is interesting to me. Joseph has this dream, and I want you to notice, who does Joseph's dream align him with? It aligns him with Pharaoh. Now, if you were to go back when Joseph was 17 and say, Joseph, okay, you've got this great dream for your life. Who do you want to roll with? Your dad and your brothers, or Pharaoh, the evil, wicked king of all of Egypt? Which one do you want to roll with? He would have gladly picked the place of safety and security. But when you dream, it causes you to align yourself with people who are going to further your dream. Joseph never realizes his dream. He would never accomplish the dreams that God set in his heart were it not for him being aligned with Pharaoh. The third thing it does for us is this. Number 3, dreams attract us to the places and people God wants us to change and influence for him. It attracts us to the people and places God wants us to be. Let me say this to you. You are not who you're friends with, and you are not where you live, and you don't work where you work on accident. God puts us there so that we can attract the people that God has called us to minister to leverage our life for, to dream with, and to allow our dreams to be a blessing for. This week, my wife and I had dinner with some good friends who are missionaries to China. We had dinner with them on Wednesday night. And I was asking the guy their stories, like, tell me, how did you pick China? And he's like, it really wasn't even on our radar, but there was this moment in our life where we began to have this dream, and it's like God awakened our heart to what he would have us do, and we knew in our hearts it was China. When you begin to realize this, what happens with dreams is why your dreams matter is not only do they align you with the right people, but they're going to attract you to the right places and the right kinds of people. You see, for some of you, you have a dream to do something with your life, to go somewhere, to live a life that matters, to invest yourself into a relationship or into a city or into a state. You have this dream that God's placed on your heart. And the reason you need this dream is because what it does is it helps you prioritize. It helps you to focus on where you need to go and what you need to do. The final thing is this, number 4. It attacks the darkness in our minds about who we are. It attacks the darkness in our minds about who we are. Now, here's the reality about dreams. When you dream, there's going to be this part of you that is full of fear. You see, if you don't have fear when it comes to your dreams, what you don't have is dreams. What you do have is a plan. You see, because if you can accomplish the things you want to do without God's help, if you can accomplish, like if you can raise enough money and gather enough people to help you and dream big, if you can do these things without God, you've got a plan. You don't have a dream. You've got a business plan. But when you really begin to dream and your dream is bigger than you, fear is going to be your constant companion. But when you dream big, God-sized kind of dreams, you will always live in fear. Fear is a dreamer's constant companion. And what tends to happen in the moments of fear is this is what the enemy uses. This is what Satan uses to attack you, to stop you from dreaming. You see, if he can get you to stop dreaming, he'll control you. If he can get you to lean into fear, he'll paralyze you and cause you to never step forward towards the dreams that God has for you. So what happens is this. When we dream and when we continue to allow ourselves to dream, it says to God, I don't have everything figured out, but what I do have figured out is that you're greater than me. I don't have everything figured out, but you're the provider, not me. I don't have everything figured out, but you know the relationships I need, not me. I trust that you are in control. Now, beyond all that, it means this. When we dream and when we allow God-sized dreams to infiltrate our mind, it's literally an assault on the enemy. See, what the enemy would love to do is to cloud your thought process with darkness. And what dreams do is they bring light to this dark place of our soul. They really do. And so what God does as we dream is it causes us to lean in and to trust him. It forces us to say, I cannot do this on my own. I have to have you. Why do our dreams matter? That's why. Now here's the next question, okay? So how do we know what is a dream from God? Like, how do we know what's a dream from God and not just some selfish, self-centered, self-focused dream? How do you know what is a dream from God? I'm going to look at 3 different things, then we'll wrap up. Number 1 is this. God's dream rests upon the sovereignty of God. Now, sovereignty is a big, churchy kind of word. Sovereignty just literally means the unconditional, unlimited power. God's dreams rest upon the sovereignty of God. Now, here's the deal for most of us. Most of us have these dreams, and if we're honest, the dreams that we have, they center around us and what we're capable of and what we want to do with our talents and our skill sets. But the reality is that God's dream for your life doesn't rest upon your ability, it rests upon his ability. Think about Joseph, okay? Joseph is looking back across the last 30-something years of his life. And as he's looking upon the last 30 years of his life, he probably thinks in that moment, God, somehow, in some way, you were in control. It didn't make sense to me in the moment, but somehow, in the middle of my story, somehow, in some way, you were in control. And you think, how does this make sense? Okay, imagine this. If God could have whispered to Joseph at 17, you're going to have this great dream for your life and you're going to accomplish great things, Joseph probably would have said, yeah, sign me up. Of course I'm going to do it. But when he was thrown into the pit, if God could have come and stood over and said, Joseph, hey, I know this is crazy. I've still got a plan and a purpose for your life. It's going to be all right. Just trust me. Joseph would have been like, what are you talking about? My own flesh and blood sold me out. My brothers, they sold me out. What are you talking about? I'm in a pit. As he's sold into slavery, Joseph, God's at work. Trust him, trust him, trust him. It doesn't make sense. When he's sold into slavery and then accused of rape and then thrown into prison, hey, Joseph, I know this doesn't make sense, but God's in control. He's at work. Trust him. Trust him. Trust him. See, when we get dreams, what tends to happen is we tend to make men and the voice of men and the opinions of men very, very large. We tend to make the opinion and the voice of God and the power of God very small. But I promise you, as Joseph looked back upon the last 30-something years of his life, as he thought back about specifically the last 22 years, from when he was thrown into a pit to when his brothers came and bowed before him, from the moment he had a dream to the moment he saw his dream fulfilled, he began to realize that God is very, very big, and that people and his problems are very, very small. What happens when you have some perspective, and what happens when you have a God-sized dream, is you begin to realize that God is sovereign. He's all powerful. It's like sitting in a boat and trusting that the boat is going in the current of the water. It's going to take you to where you need to be. Some of you need to relax a little bit and trust that in some part of your life, and really in every part of your life, that God is ultimately and completely in control. Your dream and my dream completely rests on the sovereignty of God. Look at what Joseph says. Now, this is Genesis chapter 50. This is later than what we read. Now his father has come to Egypt. Pharaoh, the king of the land, has said, listen, these are your family. I'm going to bless them. I'm going to hook them up. I'm going to put them in their own piece of land. I'm going to give them everything they've ever needed because of you, Joseph. And look what Joseph says in Genesis chapter 50. You intended to harm me, talking about his brothers. You intended to hurt me. But God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. I want to challenge some of you to have a different kind of perspective when it comes to your trials. I want to challenge some of you to have a different perspective when it comes to chasing after your dreams. You say, well, what is that? It's that our dreams are not measured in days. They're measured in massive seasons of our lives. Our dreams can only be calculated from the perspective of history. And if you're in the middle of your dream and someone's hurt you, if someone's abused you, if someone sexually assaulted you, if someone has done anything to you that causes you to feel limited, to make your dreams feel insignificant and unaccomplishable. I don't even know if that's a word, I just made it up. If you feel like you can't accomplish your dream because of something someone else did, you just need to remember something. That God is fully in control. That God is sovereign over all of it, and He is working His plan. We quote this verse often in church, Romans 8:28, that God works all things together for the good of those who love Him, right? And what we focus on is that God works together all the things, right? But what about the verse? God works together all things. God's at work in all things, all situations. He's at work. No matter good or bad, He's at work in all situations. The second thing we begin to realize that when it's a God dream is that God's dream redeems our past mistakes. I want to speak to some of you specifically today because some of you feel like you can never accomplish the dreams that God has for you because of things that you did when you were a teenager. The girl you got pregnant, the bad decisions you made, that weekend that you know that weekend still haunts you, that time that you were assaulted, that time that you were abused, that time that something happened, the failed relationship that you thought would last forever, the business that died on you, the person that walked out on you, the decisions that you made and the decisions that were made to you. Some of you feel like God can't use you and you can't dream God-sized dreams because of your mistakes, and I just want to say to you, God wants to redeem your mistakes. You say, what does that even mean? It means this. When you take your mistake and you say to God, I ask you to forgive me of this and I ask you to help me to work through it, He doesn't allow you to walk through something so you can carry it alone. But one of the greatest things I've learned in my life is this, is that God wants to take us and our pain from our mistakes, pain from things that we've suffered, things that people have done to us, and He wants to redeem it. Our story and the whole reason that Access Church exists is because my wife had cancer. Okay, that sounds crazy, but we would have never stayed in Lakeland. We would have taken a church job somewhere else were it not for my wife getting cancer. And I remember sitting down with the counselor and he told me these things. He's like, God's going to use this. There's going to be a day when God uses this and you'll know that He's used it in your life to help other people. And all throughout our story of Access, all throughout the journey of starting this church and seeing hundreds of people come to faith in Jesus, seeing lots of people healed, restored, forgiven, like seeing all these things happen in our church, it wouldn't have happened were it not for that moment. Now check this out. A few months ago, that man, the counselor, texted me out of the blue, and his daughter in her early 20s was diagnosed with cancer. And this man, who was one of the wisest men who spoke directly into my life, was stumbling for words. And I texted him back something. I said, you know, when I was in my early 20s, a wise man once told me, and I quoted to him what he said to me when I was going through this most difficult season of my life. I quoted back to him what he said to me. And he said, you'll never know what that means to me. And you'll never fully grasp how God has redeemed that moment in your life to do something in my life that mattered. Thank you. Your mistakes weren't mistakes just for the sake of having a mistake. Your mistakes were mistakes so that you could be forgiven, redeemed, and so you could help someone else who's going through the same thing. Final thing, and then we're done. Number 3, God's dream empowers you to help others dream. This is really the purpose of a dream. It's that when you dream big, God-sized dreams, when you leverage your life in a way that matters, that sees other people saved, other people redeemed, when you live your life in a way that helps and blesses other people, when you live your life in a way that is focused on God-sized dreams, it empowers you to help other people to dream. This is really the goal. You see, you living your dream, you discovering why you were created and then living it out, you living a life of risk and of faith and of courage, you living a life that's fully invested in trusting God, you living a life that says, God, you are authoring my life and I just get to co-author it. You being a part of God's story that He is writing, it enables other people to dream. And one of my hopes is this. One of my hopes is that as I dream bigger God-sized dreams in my life, and as you live and dream bigger God-sized dreams in your life, that what will happen is other people will be attracted to you. And as a result of people coming alongside and aligning themselves with your dream, what happens is this, is that you have so much room in your dream for them to live their dream out as well. It creates space for people to live their dream. It creates finance for people to sustain their dreams. You weren't created to dream your dream and to accomplish things so you could get a fat bank account and sit back and retire early. You were created to big God-sized dreams, to dream huge, massive dreams so you could empower other people to dream as well. So what happens after happily ever after? What happens after you've accomplished your dreams? What happens on the other side of your dream? You help other people dream and you ask God to expand your dreams. What happens on the other side of happily ever after? What happens on the other side of your dream? You begin to ask God, help me to dream bigger dreams. And as I dream, help me to help other people live their dreams. This is my goal for the rest of my life. It's to continue to dream bigger dreams and then to help you discover and live your dream so that you can help other people live theirs. So my question to you this morning as we wrap up the series is this. What is the dream that God has given you? Now, if you don't know it, I want to challenge you to do something. I want you to go home today and this week. I want you to carve out space where it's quiet for you, space when you're not distracted, the TV's not on, the kids aren't screaming, there's no music, you're just you and God. And in the painful silence of that moment, I want you to just ask God, what is your dream for my life? What would you have me do? You see, if you don't know your dream for your life, let me tell you what you'll do. You'll try to hijack someone else's. You'll see someone else's dream that's cool and you'll try to move into their dream like a hermit crab moves into a shell that's not its own. And you'll carry around the weight of something you were never meant to carry. But if you'll discover your dream and live your dream, it'll empower you to dream bigger. It'll empower you to bless others, and it'll empower you to help others to discover why they were created to dream. So would you bow your head and close your eyes? I want to pray for you as we close out the series. Let me pray. God, I thank you that you are the creator, the author of our dreams. And God, just like in Joseph's story, you're writing this massive epic story in all of our lives. And God, for some of us, it's hard to see the end because we're somewhere in the middle. God, for those of us who find ourselves figuratively in the pit or in the prison or in Pharaoh's house or in Potiphar's house at some season or stage of our life where we can't see the end now, God, give us the faith and courage to trust you. God, for those of us who have had our dreams come true, help us to continue to trust you, to ask for you for new dreams. God, help us as we dream to help other people to uncover their dreams, to be the rescue to the story of someone who desperately needs someone else to come along and to help them to dream. And God, for those of us today who have seen a dream crumble beneath us, we've seen a dream die, I'm asking you to do what only you can do, which is to restore, to heal, and to breathe life into the dreams. God, I thank you that you are the author and you are the finisher of our faith, which means you are the author and finisher of our dreams. So God, we trust you and we lean into that today. In Jesus' name.